So I think you're on the right track. I agree with you that we haven't seen capitulation yet. Having said that, we are due for a bounce. We've already had a nice little bounce. It makes sense that we're kind of stalling here. So one of the interesting, I mean, this is a very minor resistance level. And again, keep in mind, usually major resistance levels cause price to pull back or stay below for longer periods. Minor resistance levels are very much shorter term. So you can see right here, the high of this candle matches the high right here. And that's where we're struggling right here. So right around 21.8 or so seems to be the key level that we're watching. And if we get a daily close above that, then I think there is more upside in the near term. I do think that will happen. I think that, again, the biggest catalyst for me, and again, you're right, there's so many different weird news stories, the jobs report today, but the bottom line is, I mean, heck, we even heard about Mt. Gox potentially selling 150,000 Bitcoin. None of that's causing crypto to drop. We saw the Voyager news of bankruptcy. That didn't cause Bitcoin to drop. So that's leading me to believe that there's more short-term upside before the next rollover, right? So the first target after 21.8, if we can get through this level, is this low, which was that Terra Luna collapse. So that makes sense. That would be a little resistance. And then ultimately, if that can get broken, there's a chance we could retest this area, right? And this is going to be, when you talk about resistance levels, this is like the mega resistance level. This one, I honestly don't think it gets through. 25.5 maybe. This 28 and change, I think it gets there possibly, and then that's the next start of the rollover that I have a target down to about 12 to 13,000. I do think we could even go sub 10,000 briefly in this next phase. And I agree, you've seen people very negative, but not at the capitulation point. And again, it's important to remember that to see capitulation, you have to see people go through all stages of loss. So you have denial, there's like 5 or 6 or 7 different phases. We haven't reached the final one at this point. So I do think that we have to see that. And then I do think at that point, you put in a longer term low where you'll see the next bull market potentially start after some chop.
See that happening.
So I did think that crypto was oversold. The fact that it's holding the 2000, and this is where, so I'm a big fan of psychology in terms of human psychology and trading that, because remember, it doesn't matter if you're trading stocks, commodities, Forex, or crypto, people are trading those. Therefore, if you analyze psychology of the human nature, you can actually learn a lot. So one of the things I'm expecting here is this little uptick in crypto. Notice it's coming back above the 2017 highs. And if we can inch up like past that 21.8-ish level, I think you'll start to see people, the human psychology is going to start ticking in here. And you're going to see people starting to say, wait a minute, it held that 2017 high, it's back above. It's going to start rotating from a very bearish sentiment into more of a neutral or bullish, which is going to get investors to buy into it. And then ultimately, as it moves up, then you'll eventually see those people that are getting bullish, unfortunately, wiped out on the next leg down. But it's just human nature, right? It's just human nature. There we go, Wendy. I see it. There.
The banners drive me kooks.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I think people also need to realize that, and I understand most crypto traders were never through a kind of a apocalyptic collapse like the .coms, but I mean, that was the beginning of my trading career, and the similarities from the run up are almost identical. You had crazy weird similarities, like the crypto market I think got to $3.1 trillion. The .com bubble got to 2.9 trillion. You had the Super Bowl, the .com Super Bowl with tons of Super Bowl commercials from .coms in 2000. This past Super Bowl, you had a lot of these crypto commercials, super weird stuff like that. But when the collapse occurred, Amazon lost 95% of its value. Now, I don't necessarily think Bitcoin will do that, because Bitcoin has that scarcity aspect. You see more and more adoption, so I think that may hold it up a little bit. But by no means, I mean, you still can't have the end of the crypto collapse with tens. I mean, at this point, I don't even know how many cryptos are left out there, but there's still well over 10,000 coins, if not close to 20,000 coins. And in the .com collapse, you had bankruptcies, and then you had these .coms get bought out for 99% discount of their valuation that was at the height. and that's how the sector consolidated. And we haven't seen that yet either. So again, you have to look at this final washout, and it's going to be painful, but at the same time, it's so healthy, right? It's the equivalent of kind of getting a virus and your body fights it off and gets stronger by fighting it off. It's the Darwinian thought process of the strongest can survive, and then they thrive because there's not all this other crap in the system. So, even though I think it's going to go lower, the longer term is so rosy for Bitcoin and some of these other coins. It was like a dude in his parents' basement that was like, basically created a basic shell company. And then they're like, oh, we ship XYZs, or we do pet care, or we do, and basically just because the name had .com in it, it all of a sudden, it went on the trading floor and it would just like go nuts to the upside. So there was definitely more regulation than there is in crypto, but it wasn't like it is today. There's definitely been a lot of reform in the markets that has made it a lot tougher. And in all fairness, investors have become a lot more smart, a lot more wise in terms of stocks. But I still think you brought in so many new investors into crypto and crypto alone that they didn't have that same thing. And one of the things if you watch the movie, so there's two movies that are amazing. Number one is The Wolf of Wall Street, right? So The Wolf of Wall Street, that movie you could put crypto companies in what he's doing, and it would be almost identical. The only difference is instead of running a firm, you have people like on Twitter or, these other shady characters that are just pumping, they're shilling these cryptocurrencies. And that was going on like crazy in 2021 and 2020. But the other movie is Boiler Room, which is, was the 80s. And these guys basically just would call people up and manipulate. And it is case in point, like you can plug in cryptos to those movies and it would be just like it was. So again, people just have to be careful. Unfortunately, so you had the ridiculous leverage that was going on in cryptocurrencies, and it just blows my mind that some of these companies that are now defaulting, like, how did someone not that's running these companies not see the ultimate outcome and kind of prepare for it, right? You run your household, I run my household. We have to be looking at these situations, and you have to take into account. It's basic risk management, frankly. But for them to not be paying attention or either not care, maybe they knew they had their golden parachute, but it's just nuts to me. And the same thing in the housing market is when you have that over leverage and you're just like spinning one into the next and flipping homes. There's going to be a break point, right? There absolutely is, and the system is set to have that next meteoric decline. That it probably does start with housing and all these other things. If you take how many people bought homes in the last 2 years, and if housing prices drop 30-40%, you can't tell me they're all going to be like, oh, I'll still pay my loan. We saw it in 2008, 2009. People just stopped paying. In fact, I dated a girl back then. This is a long time ago in 2008, but she just stopped paying on her condo, and she lived there for 2 years for free. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And they finally kicked her out. But there was such a backlog, right? That she just lived there and was chilling out for 2 years with no mortgage, not paying a single dime.
Well, and another thing too that they're not talking about and they're not reporting on mainstream news is for example, in LA County, we still have the housing moratorium happening. So I have friends that live in apartment complexes, and I have this one friend, he's in this apartment complex and he's the only one and there's 20 units there. He's the only one that's been paying his rent. Nobody else is.
Crazy.
And he technically he doesn't have to, but he's like, I'm not going to get into debt. F this. But nobody else living in the apartment buildings are paying any rent at all.
Right. Because isn't that so insane? It really is insane what it's come to. And it's just not healthy for the system. You have to have a system that functions. And eventually, you can put lipstick on a pig, right? And it can look like it's functioning. At some point, that collapses, and that's what we need to be careful of. And that really is, again, that's probably one of the big bull cases in the next few years for Bitcoin, is that when things really start to collapse, there will be an inflection point, in my opinion, where all of a sudden Bitcoin starts to do much better than the stock market, where the stock market is collapsing because stocks and people aren't spending. It's going to be wild. It's going to have crazy swings until it matures into kind of that more stable asset, which will come in time.
Fair enough. So as far as this weekend goes, are you just waiting for that close above approximately 21.5?
Yeah, right around 21.8. If we can get above that, and then we pierced it earlier, we've come back in. I want to see a daily close above that, and then I think you see a move to 25.5 near term. What I wouldn't want to see, I would feel very negative if we started to go back below 20,000. That would be very concerning. That would be a failure of this near-term move up. So as long as it holds 20 and then it can break 21.8 or so, then I think 25 is reasonable, and then we'll have to see about if it continues up after that. But I think it's important to recognize that's a shorter-term swing trade. My midterm outlook, which is like, and like, some of these projects, I don't know. I mean, you know more about this than me, but people were like, oh, I'm making 30% a year, or I'm making 50%, or what, maybe even monthly. And I'm just like,
that's so, and that's for me, that's why I was
doesn't sound outlandish, but I know, I mean, like I talked to some investors who were like getting 30+%, and then they had to keep their money in for like years. And I'm just like, man, oh man, like that just doesn't sound good. Like I think, and you know more about this than me, because I'm not really into the nuances, but I think they had to give back all of their profits on the percentage if they got out early. It was something like that, but it just, you got to be careful. I mean, again, I'm coming from a world of stocks where a good dividend paying stock is like 3% or 4%, and you still run the risk of the stock going down on you as well. So just got to be careful. And if you did get caught, keep in mind, in my early career, I lost my full account amount so many times before I finally learned how to trade that you guys don't feel bad, right? I mean, it sucks to lose money. It sucks to be crushed, but you can come back, but you need to educate, right?